Time now to get the latest trends in dive retailing, travel, and training with Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Now, here's your host, Scuba Radio's Greg the Dive Master.
That would be me. Welcome to Level Up, this November edition of the official podcast for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. I am Greg the Dive Master from Scuba Radio. Check it out every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern Time. This is a little bonus podcast that we put together with the folks from Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. The man behind the madness is Willie Klein. He's with me, as well as the co-publisher and editor at charge, the Dive God, Mr. Neil Watson. Willie, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing great, Greg. Thanks for organizing this little powwow. And Neil, it's nice to see you.
Yeah.
It's great to be here. Great to see a bunch of old friends. Always fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're coming off the heels of an election, and it doesn't matter who you voted for. I got a campaign I'll be pushing to make America dive again. Hopefully we can all get into that campaign. Are you with me, Willie? Or no?
I love it. I think it's great.
All right.
We need some bumper stickers for Dean. We need all kinds of stuff for the show.
Yes. Well, everybody's done with politics, and God knows the one thing I've learned about this whole season is if you go diving, you can't hear anybody talk about it. So there's another reason to go scuba diving, right? Now, before we get up and into the Level Up podcast today, we got to bring Britton Klein on. He's the man that does all the work that Willie takes credit for. But
so true.
But Britton is with us to kind of give us a little heads up on what's been going on with Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. And I know there's some exciting updates coming up for the magazine, for the DEMA show that's just going to happen here in next week or two. What can you tell us there, Britton?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Greg, so much. I'm really, really excited to be here, as always, and share all the really, really cool things that we have lined up for the DEMA show, November 19th. To the 22nd in Las Vegas. First off, if you're attending, please be sure to grab your copy of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine in the DEMA lobby. It's packed with essential information, including the exhibitors list, a seminar schedule to help you plan, your days at the show, as well as our booth, 8075. So please stop by, say hey, get your Undersea Grand Prix mat stamped for a chance to win some really, really cool prizes, courtesy of DEMA.
I love it. Now, you guys are also doing a thing at the show for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine by hosting a writers panel discussion this year. So what's that all about? What can you tell us?
Totally, Greg. We are super looking forward to hosting our writers panel discussion at 4 p.m. on Tuesday at the DEMA Resource Center at booth 8109. This panel is going to be a really unique opportunity for attendees to, meet, engage with our writers in really meaningful conversations. It's going to be about the current state of the scuba diving industry. We're going to be brainstorming ideas to help grow the industry as we head into 2025 and beyond. So we really hope everyone feels inspired and equipped with fresh insights that they can take back to their own businesses.
I love it. Hey, that sounds like an event you can't miss at the DEMA show. And before we wrap up with you, Britton, any last messages before we move on into the writers for this year, this month's podcast edition for Level Up?
Yes, sir. Totally. So if you are an exhibitor at the show, I'd really love to connect and discuss, how we can either work together or help grow your business through advertising in our magazine, Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. I know time is super valuable, especially at DEMA. So if you are interested at all in just setting up a quick meeting, feel free to call me at 954-358-9660. Or visit scubadivingindustry.com, where you'll find a link on our homepage to schedule a meeting. Whether we meet on the show floor or at the DEMA member breakfast, the NOGI Awards, the Women's Scuba Diving Hall of Fame Awards, or even just a drink in the lobby bar. I'm really looking forward to putting faces to names and strengthening those connections. And I'm really excited. I'll see you all in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'll see you there, Brendan, and I'll add that to my agenda.
Yes, sir.
Before we move away from Britton, one more thing.
Yeah.
He is nominated for the Wave Makers Award.
That's right.
And he's the top finalist. So if you haven't voted, please vote for our son. Britain.
Yes, for Britain.
Although the other two candidates are fantastic as well. So whoever wins,
Yes.
definitely
Yes.
industry wins.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, well, congrats already, Britain. You've done a great
Thank
job
you.
for the industry.
I just got a
And-
note from Patty. It looks like the voting may have already closed. So anyhow,
Okay.
Oh no. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Well, we'll
Yeah.
find out next month if he actually won.
we
but
will.
in our
or
heart,
actually in 2 weeks.
in our hearts, yeah, he's already won. I mean, look, it's in his blood, right? Willie, come on.
That's right. That's right. You
Yeah,
can't
now,
escape
yeah.
it.
I'm really looking forward to the show. I mean, Scuba Radio will be there opening the show each morning as we do, giving away tons of stuff. But you got the Wave Makers Award breakfast on Wednesday morning, Women's Diver Hall of Fame, their party at the Westgate Hotel, the host hotel, Nogi Awards, right? And and one of our writers, I think, might have a comment or two about that because he's a part of that for the Nogis this year. Isn't that right, Willie?
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan Orr.
Yeah, the Nogi Awards are on Wednesday evening, starting at 6 o'clock. It's actually the 63rd award ceremony. And the winners this year that are going to be presented with their Nogi Awards are Lad Akins in Environment, Jim Gattaker in Distinguished Service, Shirley Pomponi in Science, Jeff Bazanik in Sports Education, and Louis Preslin in Arts.
Well, there you go.
Very cool.
And that
Yeah.
that is
And-
quite a shindig, by the way.
It
If
is.
you have the opportunity to go, I'd highly
Our whole
recommend
staff's going to be there. So we look forward to seeing everybody if you can make it.
it. Absolutely. All right. Okay. Any comments overall from the Dive God before we get into our first author? Neil, are you going to just kick back and
Yeah, I'm just
enjoy the
excited
show?
about the lineup you got. Wow, you got some heavyweights here. That's
We sure
good.
do. And I think we got to go clear around the world right now to Australia and say good day, mate, to Terry Cummins from Cairns, Australia. Terry, welcome. And I apologize for
you.
my crappy Australian accent, but it's just what we do.
We'll teach you a little bit more when you get down here, and hopefully you can bring Willie with you because it would be a really great thing to have you down here to see just what we've got to offer in the dive world.
Well, it's on the agenda. I just told him right before we started our Level Up podcast today that I got a plan to get over to Australia at the beginning of 2026. So I said, Terry, you've been warned. You can leave the country. Got a year to plan.
Well, no, I'll hang around and see if I can get some humor out of this.
Well, you're easily amused if you do. But regardless, we'll move on to Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, page 45, is Terry's column, Attitude and Innovation is Everything in Future-Proofing Your Business. So the question is, what do you mean by future-proofing? How do you do that, Terry?
Well, I kind of think that one of the things that's always on the agenda is how long can I remain in business and what are the things that are going to possibly impact my sustainability in the long term. And I really started to think about this one. It's a short little article, and to many of us sitting around here today, it's probably a no-brainer. But I think innovation, introducing new ideas, a way of coping with things that we're presented with every day, the challenges, etc., really comes down to how innovation and attitude work together. And I've always been hearing, almost my entire life in the diving industry, which is kind of like 50 years now, I keep on hearing that, there's all these challenges and business has never been harder. And I just can't believe that because we've always had wars, we've always had things like SARS and the GEC and more recently COVID, and you guys have been subjected to sort of the backwash, I guess, of the elections. And,
Right.
and you hear people talking about all these things. But to future-proof your business, if you're innovative and you've got a fantastic attitude, I think that goes a long way to the survival and future-proofing your business so that you sort of remove yourself from those things. So I started looking around for this article just to get a few examples of where innovative operators are actually doing amazing things in adverse conditions. And I found that in reading some of the academic literature, it's obvious that negativity actually attracts negativity, and positivity attracts positivity. It's a little bit opposite to the physics of laws and stuff like that. So one of the things that I think that we need to do is to make sure that in our businesses we generate positive thinking and innovative attitudes all of the time, because doom and gloom attracts doom and gloom people, let's face it. And like-minded people that we want to attract, the people that want to get into diving and enjoy the wonderful underwater world that we all enjoy, do not want to face a doom and gloom type message from either a supplier or a retailer or a travel agent or whatever. So I put together a few little examples of ways people can get around this. And one of the things I did years ago was I did a seminar for a manufacturers group and talking about that advertising can be a waste of money. And part of that was to look at how if you don't have a positive message in your advertising and promotions, and you don't have a bit of humor and a bit of urgency and that call to action we all know about, then it's really not going to work. And so it all revolves around this idea of innovation and basically a great attitude. So to give you an example of where you're heading, Greg, soon down to visit us in Australia with the Great Barrier Reef, we all know that there's been lots of talk about the Great Barrier Reef is, you know, dying or is not going to be around for much longer. But I found that 87% of the divers that come here want to go back. And so that's just one of the examples I put in the article of where negativity can drive a whole bunch of people in the wrong direction. So read the article. There's a few more examples in there that are quite exciting. I don't want to take up too much time, and it's really, really great to be in such great company, not only here today, but also, as co-writers of this magnificent magazine. It's been long overdue and something we all need to put out to the industry.
Well, there you go. And I think those are wise words. Wouldn't you agree there, Willie? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's great. And if you read his article, I love the message that Terry usually communicates. And by the way, I think we've been using for the last 3 or 4 issues many photos from his wife. That's a very, very talented photographer. But the most important thing is you see these photos, you're like, where is that? It looks like Fiji. I had no idea. It's so beautiful. But the text in this last article talks about several examples of very unique marketing that a lot of the shops have been doing in Australia. A photo club exhibit for a photo club that brought in 4,500 people to look at photos. Another one was a dive shop that provided daycare for kids while the parents went out on the dive trip that day. I mean, very innovative stuff and very creative. So it goes really nicely with your message. Just innovation is really how you survive in this industry.
Yeah, and turning a negative into into a positive, or at least
Absolutely.
working it some way. I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this friggin' hat I'm wearing today. Make America dive again. Hello. I know everybody hates politics. I'm right there with you. But hey, how can you take something negative, twist it into something fun and unique, and turn it into something positive for dive businesses? So that's where my mindset is. Whether I'm connecting, I don't know, but that's where I'm going. Neil, you have any comments? Are you with me on this or what?
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a pleasure to be in this industry. And I mean, you take people that normally may not be the most fun in the world under their business environment, yet you get them in a group of divers, and I mean, everybody just seems to be having a good time and creative camaraderie. So, yeah, absolutely, I'm with
Hey,
you there.
where are the coolest people on the planet? Let's be honest and modest. No,
Oh,
but we are
on my
pretty.
dive boat.
That's right.
We're the
It's
wettest people on the planet too.
Well, that's true. But scuba diving's kind of like a superpower. That's the way I look at it. It's my Avengers cape or
So
whatever.
if you don't mind, I'm going to tee up Dean here on this
Yeah.
next article. Dean has been kind enough to write. Him and Jessica and Deanne from Dive Ventures have written a 4-part series. This is a 4th-part series on selling your dive business. We all would love to know what have an exit strategy in life with our companies. And in a time where it seems that there's a lot of pressure on retailers, a lot of pressure on retailing in general, it's so refreshing to see a company come along and start helping these very, very iconic individuals, Doug McNeese, Rick Sass, a person I know personally, Don Peterson, exit their businesses with class and have a way that they can continue to stay involved. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him talk. But Dean, I really appreciate this series. And I think that this is something that everybody, if you're a retailer out there listening, you should go back and read all 4 of the articles because they're that great.
That's awesome. Thank you, Willie. And from Australia straight to the center of center of somewhere, center of the United States, Omaha, Nebraska.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that?
That is far away
Election?
from the water.
He's got an election map
Those are the
behind him.
states that Jacques Cousteau carried.
That's what it is.
That's good.
There you go.
It is impressive.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Too soon.
As Willie said, we kind of took it into 4 pieces, right, in kind of a linear fashion. And we started by saying, hey, if you're even thinking about it, or even if you're not thinking about it, you should start. There's never too early to think about how you transition your business, because ultimately that's going to happen, right, to all of us. And then we started, then we talked about who, what, where, when, why, and how to think about that. And then Deanne Olson, our chief financial officer, took the next chapter and said, okay, now that you've thought about it, how do you prepare to do it, right? And her points were, you got to get organized. You need to understand the economics, because there's going to be evaluation, and you got to be realistic about that. And we provided some range out there for people to at least get a feel, and to not underestimate the emotional impact this is going to have, right? Because most of these people, most of us, this has been our life. And when you decide to retire and turn your baby over to somebody else, that's almost a tougher emotional decision than it is an economic decision. And then Jessica, our head of marketing, talked about, okay, now that you've actually done all that, how do you communicate it, and how important that is, right? And how you share the who, what, where, when, why, and how, that you be really, really mindful about who your audience is, the WIFM, what's in it for me, because every one of these acquisitions we've done, the first thing they do is they look at the previous owner and say, are you okay with this? Are you? And when they say, yep, we're good with it, then they think about, what does this mean to me? And your audience is dive pros, your audience is your retail team, your audience are your customers, your audience is the vendors. And the communication should be the same, but you got to tailor it a little bit, because that's what they really care about, is how does this impact them? And then the third thing that Jessica really reinforced is, don't shy away from change. So many people want to say, oh, nothing's going to change. Well, that's malarkey, right? Something's going to change, something better change, or else none of us are going to be here. And so don't be afraid of change, lean into change and acknowledge change, and highlight what is going to be different. So those first 3 were hearing from us. Then we said, what better than to hear from these people that have actually gone through it? And so that's what this 4th one was designed to do. And I was probably most excited about that, because it's from previous dive owners that have gone through the process, right? And as Willie said, Doug McNeese, self-professed scuba Jesus, right? I think anybody that's been to Edema knows Mr. McNeese. And 2nd generation, been in the business for 60 years, owned the dive shops, had 4 locations. We bought 3 of them, Atlanta, Little Rock, and Memphis. And so Doug highlights a couple of things. He starts with the economics, right? Is, what would your business be worth if you weren't running it? And he was honest in saying, probably not much, and probably most likely not as much as you think. So that's just reality. So he was honest about acknowledging that. The second is, he didn't underestimate that the emotional aspect is harder than the economic aspect, especially when it's multi-generation. And then the third that he went through was, most important thing to him was preserve the legacy, right? And it's the legacy not just from Doug, but from his parents. And so there's a huge emotional obligation to that. So he stressed how important it was to find the right buyer. Fortunately, thinks we were, and we do too. And then he talked about change, that it's different, and don't think it's not going to be. And then we talked to Rick Sass. Rick and his wife Kim have been in the business for 40 years in Battle Creek, Michigan, subaquatic sports and service. And Rick was a little bit different. He said, we just wanted to retire. We wanted to turn the keys over, and we know we had one shot to do it. And they actually thought about just closing their doors. And they said, well, we thought about that. We couldn't do that, because all of our customers are our friends, and all of our friends are our customers, and we can't let them down. If we close down, there wouldn't be a dive shop in Battle Creek, Michigan. So he wanted to make sure he found somebody that would take care of their customers and who shared the values and goals, right? And then he acknowledged things are different. And you say, well, I may not have done it that way. You just have to acknowledge that, and you just have to accept that and go forward. Don Peterson, as Willie talked about, he was my first acquisition. Loved Don to death. And he had been in the business for 30 years with Aqua Sports in Springfield, Missouri. And Don had wanted to retire from the day-to-day, but he still wanted to remain involved. So we made that happen. But his priority was, I want to take care of the customers, and I'm going to stick around and make sure you guys do that. We said, that's great. So Don still teaches for us. He loves teaching college classes. He loves leading trips, and he loves hanging around the dive shop, teaching the next generation. And we love that. We couldn't be happier. Chelsea Foster, another kind of interesting story. Her parents, Wyatt and Beverly Foster, own Sea Ventures in Atlanta. Again, second generation, and they wanted to retire. If you haven't heard Wyatt sing, he's an aspirational rock and roll star, and they wanted to spend time with their grandkids and traveling. But they wanted to continue their legacy, and what was most important for them is somebody who would support Chelsea, their daughter, who was running the business and still is, and continue their legacy. Chelsea's still running the business. All the people are still there. All the people are still employed by us, and we've expanded Chelsea's role to oversee several of the businesses. So it's been a great win. So anyway, great stories. Please read them because each of them has a little bit interesting piece to it. But I would say, if I were to summarize it, what we tried to outline and what these 4 examples said is, understand why you want to sell. Understand what role you want to play going forward. The most important thing is finding the right buyer to preserve your legacy. Otherwise, just close the doors. And understand and acknowledge that it's going to be different. Change is going to happen, and embrace it. So
There you go.
that's all I got to say. So I appreciate
Great.
the opportunity, Greg. Thanks for
No
letting me
problem.
come on.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dean Hollis has my vote for best dive shop buyer in the country. I mean, just look at the map behind him. He's turning the entire country red and white like a dive flag. I love it, Dean. And you can
Thank
hear
you.
it in his voice. I mean, he's not a politician, but I'll tell you what, he comes across very honest and says exactly what you would want someone to say, that if you're going to hand the reins of your dive shop business over to someone, and it's
That's
very
very kind. Thank you,
genuine.
Greg.
Yeah, it's very genuine.
So
And
true.
hats off to you, Dean. You're doing good work, my friend.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. All right, up next, we go back to Dan Orr because he's not only is he involved with the Nogies and God knows what else, he's written an article in page 7 of the latest issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, the 4 Ps of scuba diving safety. One of them is not just P. There are 4 Ps, and you're going to explain what those 4 are. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the one I hinted at, the 5th one that you were just talking about, about hydration. So we won't talk about that here.
Yes. These are different.
That's from
but-
Saturday's show.
You're right. We'll save that for Scuba Radio. Yes,
Well,
exactly.
what always concerned me too is writing too much. So I want to make sure that I'm always writing how much that William wants me to write, not too much, because sometimes I could go on and on. As you know,
Let me tell you, sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but his article is the #1 most read article. In fact, of all the 10 issues we've run this year, I think 9 of them, his article is the most read article in every single issue, because it shows you he's filling a hole that's so desperately needed. People need this information, Dan.
There you go.
Our industry does, I should say.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to know that people are reading that and all the other articles. I mean, there's so much information in the magazine. I mean, it's absolutely fabulous. So it's one that I want to take the magazine, just read through it the entire time when I first get it. But it's a great magazine, and thank you, William, for doing that. It's a great service to the industry.
We're honored.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the 4 Ps, and those 4 Ps are things, for example, like planning. I want to make sure that you plan well enough so you have all the information you need and your diving companions need to make the decisions you have to make during a dive. And the one thing I wanted to emphasize in that section had to do with the fact that we need to communicate that information. I've been on trips where I've seen divers down there arguing underwater because they were on 2 different dive plans. So you need to make sure that everybody knows what they have to know to be able to make the decisions for you and your diving companions during the time you're underwater. And also prepare. And I talked about that in one of the other articles I'd written about the fact that your skills do get rusty after a while. And you need to make sure that your skills are good and effective. And also you want to make sure that your health is effective, because a lot of people really don't take care of their health as they should, which is another article that I'd written in one of the past issues. And then practice, because we need to practice those skills. I mean, once we leave the scuba course, that practice really is up to us. We need to carry that on. We need to make sure that we're practicing, especially those complex skills like the exchange of air underwater and ditching your weights and anything that requires that combination of mind and skill to be able to perform effectively. Because if something happens, you need to be able to perform effectively and quickly to be able to satisfy and mitigate that risk. And then perform, because we want to make sure that we And as I say in the article, dive our recent experience and not necessarily our certification card. I mean, the certification card is necessary because that's a ticket we need to be able to go diving. But it really is our recent experience that really gives us those skills and those tools we need to be able to dive safely and, above all, dive enjoyably, because that's the reason we took up the sport in the first place. Because after all, when you're underwater, that certification card is not going to do any good at all. So you need to make sure your skills are recent. You need to make sure they're practiced regularly, to make sure that you can be safe and have a great time.
Like it. Good stuff
Yeah.
as always.
So well said.
Words of wisdom from the man, Dan. Right.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on. We're going to go bi-coastal here. We got Gil and Ken. Gil's in California, I assume. And I know Ken's in New York City. And they wrote an article on page 13 of the latest issue. Let's all jump in on the Global Blue Friday bandwagon. Now, I know what Blue Friday is because I talked to Gil, I think, the last couple of years about this on Scuba Radio. But Gil, I'll go to you first. Fill in the rest of the class listening and watching.
Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Ken.
Okay.
We talked to you earlier about it, Greg.
Yeah, I guess first things first, it's great to be here. I'm joining you from New York City, where I am here through December for work. It's a terrific honor to be here. Blue Friday is a holiday that we started about 4 years ago. This is our fourth celebration. Blue Friday is always the day after American Thanksgiving. This year it's the 29th. And Blue Friday celebrates the ocean planet that we live on by going scuba diving. Now, there's some out there who will call that same day Black Friday, I've heard it said. But we have our own motto, which I think sums it up best. Don't shop, dive.
Like it. Or black and blue. No, that doesn't work either. Just go with that. Okay. Yeah. I mean, who listening and watching right now wouldn't want to do that as a scuba diver? That's way more fun, way more enjoyable and less stressful, right?
Imagine if 500 retailers across the country got into this whole thing and decided to make this a thing.
Well, that's the idea.
It could really
right?
make a big difference.
Well, the inspiration actually came from REI, which closes its stores on Black Friday so that people can go out hiking. And I thought that was great corporate responsibility and a lesson actually that I wanted to teach to my son, that shopping is unimportant, having life experiences is. Mm-hmm. So what I did 4 years ago was I booked out Point Lobos State Reserve in California. It is some of the best diving on the coast. You need to make a reservation because they only let about 10 or 12 divers in every day. It is pristine, the visibility is good, the fish, the marine life is very healthy. And my son had just gotten his certification, so I needed an excuse. He was 15 at the time to take him out into the ocean. So I booked out the reserve, and a whole bunch of people joined us. And then we wound up booking out on Saturday, and a whole bunch of other people joined us. And this was a great opportunity to get out, burn off the turkey dinner, and like we have Blue Friday, and if your mother-in-law is in town, we'll have Bluer Saturday, and if she's still sticking around, we might have Bluest Sunday. So it's a great opportunity to get out, be with your friends, get some exercise in, and the sales will be there on Monday.
Yeah, and you guys are doing that in California, but any dive shop, any dive club can jump on this bandwagon all around the world. Right, Gil?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So last year, I reached out to a member of our dive club who lives on the Big Island. He went off the coast of Kona that day. I reached out to a dive shop I've been with in Roatan, and they did it that day. So last year we were in 3 places. This year we want to go larger. And remember that famous line from Jaws where Chief Brody is on the back of the boat and he's chumming the water and he sees the shark for the first time and he goes up to Quint and he goes, "We're going to need a bigger boat." Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're doing here today. The Level Up podcast and Scuba Diving Industry Magazine are giving us a bigger megaphone to broadcast the news about Blue Friday worldwide to everyone today and in the magazine. And we're asking dive shops and liveaboards and reefs or resort hotels to promote Blue Friday in their resorts to their students. So whether they're getting certified or doing resort courses or open water certification or whatever, we're asking them to focus on Blue Friday, communicate it to me through email to gil@zymer.com. It's on my name here. And I will coordinate it with our social media and for our efforts for next year to show how much bigger Blue Friday can get year after year after year as we continue to make it an evergreen holiday event.
I like it. Neil, what do you think? We do this in the Bahamas.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Give us another
I'm on board.
excuse.
Get me the information.
Yeah,
For
pop
sure.
over to Bimini and maybe do something like that. That'd
Yeah.
be a little
I'll
less
put it out
trek.
to the Bahama Diving Association, try to get them all involved.
I
Sure.
love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Good
We're
work.
actually organizing a Blue Friday holiday here in New York City. I've been working with Big Apple Divers, which is one of the largest and oldest dive clubs in the country, and a dive shop here in Manhattan called Pan Aqua. So I want to give them both a shout out.
You got it. Well,
It'd be
shout.
cool if we had a
receive.
maybe what we could do, Gil, is if you could send us some information or keep us in the loop, we could set up a special page perhaps on our main website where people can see who participated or who's participating, and if you don't have a web presence, and then you guys can link to it or do whatever you want, but at least it'll be a simple resource. And I would dedicate that if you can drop us that information.
Thanks, Willie.
There
Sure.
you go. Good
Thank you.
stuff. All right, moving on. Our next author and writer from Scuba Diving Industry Magazine is John Flanders. Are you related to Ned? You've heard that a million times, and I know you
A
heard
few
it.
times now. He's a distant
Yes.
cousin. Yeah.
It's a Simpsons thing, and I'm
So John's brand new to us. He's this first time writing for us. He's a manufacturer, and they build a product called custom mouthpieces. And he's also an advertiser, which is very nice. Thank you very much for supporting this. That's how it makes all this happen. But I asked him if he would be interested in writing, and he said, yeah. And he wrote this great article from a manufacturer's perspective on how to maximize your DEMA show experience. So I'm just a little intro there, but I'll let you go ahead and take it away, John.
yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's Secure Custom Mouthpieces, just to, get a little advertising blurb in there.
Seen
I've
them.
been around.
How many years you guys been doing that, by the way? Years, haven't you, with the Secure thing?
1992.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been a long time, yeah. And first of all, we're really excited to be part of the Scuba Diving Industry Magazine community because it's obviously got some incredible talent that's writing for it. And more importantly, it's got a lot of incredible talent that's reading the magazine. And something that the industry direly needs is more outlets like the magazine to kind of bring the industry together. I've been going to DEMA for a couple decades now, and I've been there as a store owner, an instructor, and certainly as a manufacturer as well. And I think you could take the article in from any of those perspectives, and it would definitely apply to whoever's going to DEMA. There's a lot of good tips in there, and my favorite tip out of all of them is have a good plan when you're walking into DEMA. It's an incredibly overwhelming space,
really
lots
true.
of cool products, lots of cool destinations, and obviously an abundance of it too. It's a big show. I mean, it takes some time to truly circulate through the event center. And when I say have a plan, what I really mean is have a plan of what do you want to get out of DEMA for the next 12 months. Not I'm just walking around looking at things. It's what do I want to extract? I'm spending money to go to a professional trade show. What do I want to extract out of it that is going to take me from point A, which is today, to point B, which is 12 months from now?
That makes so much sense. Yeah, you have been around for a long time. I have, Willie has, Neil has, and we kind of know our way around DEMA these days. But boy, you bring a friend, which I do that almost every year. I bring, a couple new people that are, listening to Scuba Radio and they want to help us out. And I'm like, all right, come on in, I'll show you. And they are totally just blown away and don't know what to do. They're kind of like sensory overload when they walk into the DEMA show floor sometimes. And that's the best advice you can get. No, find somebody who's been there, done that, to help you, steer you a little bit. But definitely know what you're trying to pull out of the show to make your investment of being
so
there
true.
worthwhile, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a great Great article. Britton even read it because, well, this is going to he's come to the first DEMA show. So
Yeah.
that was very insightful for him too.
Yeah, and John does a great job with Secure too, because you guys always, I mean, you have people backed up at your booth like crazy every DEMA because they're coming to getting their latest imprints, right? You're heating those mouth guards and doing that whole thing.
Yeah, we used to do the we would actually have people go in and customize that right there at the booth.
Yeah.
This year we've decided not to do a booth. We're supporting. We have a lot of distributors out there,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll be supporting them. We're also going to be at Deep Blue Adventures. They have a booth. We've got a big promotion going with them because they have a 30th anniversary party on Tuesday late afternoon, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we also have partnered up with Dive Newswire. We did our first ever pro deal, which was actually in September's issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. We've done our first ever pro deal where we're actually giving away free mouthpieces to dive masters and instructors, so they can realize if they haven't already realized the benefits, and obviously show their customers and whatnot what the benefits are. But so yeah, we will be there in force, but not necessarily in our own booth this year.
All right. Well, you'll find them. Just look for John and just say, "Hey,
We're
saw you
all
on the
over. Yeah,
podcast thing."
Yeah, we've got, yeah, that's it. We've got obviously Trident will be there. We distribute through Trident. Marine Sports will be there. We distribute through Marine Sports. So we don't want to compete against our own distribution channel.
Right.
Hey, John, when's the event? When's the party at Deep Blues booth? Tuesday
It's I believe I might be wrong on the time. It's either 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock on Tuesday.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody
it's gonna be a
listening,
lot
make
of
sure you
fun.
show up.
There's going to be a lot of people there, so get there early.
And
Mhm.
thank you, John. And if you don't mind, Greg, I'm going to tee up our next speaker. We're really honored to have Linda Sue from Dive Marketing Media with us. And she actually wrote this article a month and a half ago. And I said, Linda, this is such an important topic and it's such a valuable service to our industry. Can you go back and dig a little deeper? So she turned it from basically a page and a half, 2 pages into almost a 4-page article. And I'm honored to have given this space because I feel like that it's something that is so needed in our industry is and unrepresented is women that are in the professional side of our business. And I'm honored to have you on board. Linda's been around the industry for quite a long time. Her company is very well known, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Linda, and let you talk a little bit about your first article because you're going to be writing a lot more for us, hopefully.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
That's news to me. No.
Yeah.
Nothing like being on the spot.
Well, I really appreciate being having the opportunity to be here with all of you. Um, one of the things I wrote about was women in the dive industry. And as I look around this panel, I know Patty's hiding there behind the Scuba Diving Industry banner, but, I see that I'm the only one on this panel, really. But honestly, how it started was I had, and I began, my first women's dive day event when I was teaching before I came into the marketing part of the business. I was teaching and I started I organized a women's dive day out in Redondo Beach, California. I had taught at Dive and Surf for 7 years. And I really we called ourselves Women of Watermen because I mentored under the Maestro brothers. And Bob and Bill were the owners of the company when I started. And I remember specifically one day when Bill came in and he said to me, he said, I am so excited and so proud to have a female dive shop manager, and you just keep doing what you're doing. And that was like, wow, it was pretty exciting at the time. And so I had a team of a lot of female dive masters and instructors, and I didn't really think that there was, this mass difference until I went with Dive and Serve to the first DEMA show, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is really a small percentage of women that are in the dive industry, and honestly, it's a challenge sometimes, but it's very rewarding, and I'm very excited to say that I've been here in the industry for like nearly 30 years. And moved in through different segments of it. And there's a lot of people in the industry that help support women in diving. And I think, having other women that can teach young girls, there's that extra little sense of comfort. Women are a little bit more nurturing. I mean, maybe some of your elementary school, your teachers growing up, maybe many of them are women. They're kind of, encouraging young females to enter in. So there's sometimes, I remember when I was teaching, I had a lot of fathers, and it was like a daddy-daughter thing where they wanted to get their daughters into diving. So they would come through classes, and I had a lot of students that were, dads who brought their daughters through. I know that the industry is also doing a lot of things to encourage more women. There's mermaid classes are taking off like crazy. In the article I wrote a lot about. Some of the female manufacturers that are now offering, things to make it more comfortable for women. Secure mouthpiece is one of the first things I picked up. So thank you for that, John. That was really helpful. When I first started diving, because that thing was uncomfortable, and women, when you have those little small things that make small changes, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can do this, like, hey, if he can do it, then I can do it too, So, and when they see other women as role models, that helps encourage young women as well to stay active. When you have events that you plan that are, Women's Dive Day events, that's, started 10 years with Patty. They kind of coined that and started that event. But it's turned into much more worldwide. It doesn't have to be an organization specific, and anybody can have this event. In fact, maybe even having it more than once a year, encouraging certain types of events that might be more attractive to young girls to come into the industry, stay into the industry is important. Yeah, let's see what else. There's some of the manufacturers that we talked about. There's Scuba Rag I talked about in the article, and Stream to Sea. Those folks are both female owned manufacturers, and they're making products that help with hair management, which is like a big thing. Like, how do I do my hair if I have a hood on? And what do I do if I'm warm water? There's techniques to that with long hair. So having someone that's comfortable, that can kind of guide women to help answer some of those, to make sure they're more comfortable while they're diving, keeps them active, and having role models to keep them excited about looking up into the future and becoming pros is, I think also important too. So I know the industry is growing, and there are more percentages of people coming in. There's dive travel specialists out there. There's so many more women organizations that I just didn't even have space for in this article to write about. But there's dive travel agencies that that are owned by women, that are sending people all over the world, have
like Deep Blue.
experience. Yeah.
Like Deep Blue, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. And resorts are owned by women now. There's dive centers, Dive Tech I mentioned. Jack's Diving Locker is co-owned by a female. And then, family diving, organizing family diving trips from Margot Payton. She's got keeping families together. So now it's like, oh no, we can bring the whole family together. Of course, there's girls and boys in that, and having women that can help nurture, basically, and be role models is, I think, what will help sort of grow this industry with more women, providing opportunities, providing role models, and all that equipment and all those special needs so we're comfortable, with when we are diving. I think is
Yes.
really important. Women Divers
Diving
Hall of
needs
Fame.
women. I think everybody would agree with that, male or female,
Thank you,
right,
Linda.
Willie?
Yeah, I agree. And Linda, thank you again for taking the time to research the article so well. So if you haven't read it, please read it. It's really important. And I look forward to hopefully working with you on other stuff too in the future.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, we got to make the tent bigger, or just be welcoming, and it's tough for women sometimes. I have no question about it. But I know I don't speak alone for all the folks out there that would just like, we just need more of everybody. Women, minorities, anything, just bring them all. We just need everybody. All right, moving on to our next.
Dan had a comment.
I was just going to make a comment. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I actually gave a lecture at a university in Tokyo. And when I looked out in the audience, almost half the people in the audience were women, and the average age was probably around 30.
So we got our work cut out for us here stateside.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Most of the dive masters on the boats in Australia are women. They have probably a 60 to 40% bias. It's
Wow.
fantastic.
Good stuff.
Great.
All right. Like I said, the
Great.
more the merrier.
Billy, I have a question for Dan. Dan, when you went
Yeah.
on that Antarctica trip, I know Virginia Brea was there. Was that what percentage of women to men was that for the Sea Explorers?
On the citizen science program, there were
Yeah.
probably, I'd say, maybe 30% were women.
Oh, I thought it was more. That's good though. It's great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Just know it's out there, ladies. Bring it on. We'll welcome you with open arms. But,
So our next regular, Greg.
Yes.
But he's not showing video, so I don't know if he's there. Hello, Alex, are you there? Hello?
Alex Brelsky, Dr. Alex.
Dr. Brelsky.
We may have to go bypass him.
I had to wake up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there he is.
He was paying attention. He wasn't sleeping.
Yeah,
Of
of
course.
course.
Never do that.
Playing Tetris, probably.
So, Alex, page 20, the latest issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, an interview with Reef World executive Cleo Harvey, the director of that fine organization called Green Fins. What can you tell us about green fins?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised you don't know what green fins are because.
Well, I do, but I'm trying to.
No. I mean, just as you're ready to enter the water, and your seasick dive buddy decides to call Ralph. You end up with green fins.
That would be my dive buddy for sure.
Yeah,
they called me the Chunkster in college, not by coincidence.
Anyway, Green Fins is the only internationally recognized accreditation program for dive operators who want to affirm their commitment to sustainable diving and snorkeling practices. It's an initiative funded by the UN Environment Program. It's administered by a UK-based NGO called Reef World. And Chloe, as you said, Harvey is the executive director, but more importantly, in my opinion, she's the world's leading expert on sustainable diving and snorkeling. And she's done more to advance this than I think anyone else on the planet. It was a real honor to do that. If you remember last month, I wrote an article called What is Sustainability and Why Should I Care? And I wanted to follow that up with some practical example. And this was a perfect opportunity because while green fins is very well known in the Indo-Pacific and in East Asia, it's not very well known in this hemisphere. So the intent of my article was to kind of broaden the awareness among our own readers, in this part of the world. In the interview, Chloe expounds on 5 main points. First, how the industry is responding to the increasing importance of environmental sustainability and why this is happening so broadly and at such a fast pace. Secondly, of course, what the industry can do to contribute to marine conservation and particularly to coral reef conservation. How, of course, green fins fits into that. And then what the future holds for green fins and sustainable diving in general. And then lastly, to kind of explore what other segments of the industry besides the resort operators are responding to this shift, a major global shift in terms of sustainability. And finally, DEMA will be a great opportunity to actually meet Chloe because at the end of the piece, I highlight several DEMA seminars and even an industry roundtable that Chloe and I will be presenting along with Shel Patterson of Deep Blue Adventures. You can download the details on the QR code at the end of the article. So that's kind of the short answer. It's really, it's always been curious to me why green fins has not been more extensive here in this hemisphere.
Well, there you go. She is doing great work, and the organization's really getting out there. But yeah, we need to.
I'm going to do a little commercial for Alex too, if you don't mind, Greg. Wednesday, November 20th, 4:00. Alex is they're doing the one seminar. The second one's Thursday, the 21st at 10 a.m. And the last one's Friday, the 22nd at 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. That's in addition to the morning that you're doing the 2-hour panel discussion, correct, Alex?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'm doing a seminar on basically the changing face of the dive industry, or is it? And then on Thursday, I'm going to do a presentation on how to connect and engage customers through dive travel using a quote from Maya Angelou. So if you're interested in finding out more, come by.
Okay, if you want to get some culture, look up Dr. Alex Brelsky and DEMA.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, Alex has a very unique take on our industry, and he's probably one of the voice in the wilderness out there that is really so needed. And he has so much to offer because of his perspective. And Alex is like many of us here have been in this industry our whole lives and has had many different versions of his careers over the years. But to end up where he has and with his credentials, there's just nobody better in the world that can talk about sustainability in the dive industry than Alex. And I'm really excited to hear what he has to say at DEMA. And I invite everybody, please go to an Alex seminar. They're worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Richard Nixon was in the White House when I got in the dive industry.
Wow. Well, he said it, not me. All right,
Yeah.
moving on. That's Jeff Serampino.
Jeff wrote this great article for us on specifically from a retailer's perspective on the DEMA show. I mean, we know it's just 10 days or so away from now, but if you haven't read it and you're a retailer out there, read Jeff's article. It's fantastic on page 34.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody, and I'll back clean up here today. Again, but the DEMA show, does it still matter for retailers? And yes, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal for dive retailers. A couple of years ago, I had a very large manufacturer come into me and say that they weren't going to be at DEMA because the timing was all wrong. They would rather it be in May. And, I kind of looked at them and said, do you know what we're doing here in the Northern Hemisphere in May? From a dive retailer perspective, we're working pretty hard. So timing was all wrong. So the timing of DEMA, I think, is really optimal for dive retailers, not for everybody, but for a lot of us who are winding down the season, a long year of teaching, training, travel, things like that. And right before the Thanksgiving holiday, the timing is optimal for the DEMA show. The other thing about the show that's really important for dive retailers is the fact that you are maximizing your opportunity or your time. You're there and you get to interact with all your stakeholders in one spot: training agencies, your manufacturers, your representatives, your travel destinations. It's just everybody's there at one particular point in time, and you're really maximizing your economic value of your travel budget and your time commitment. So there's a lot to be said for that. I had to turn down a couple of times where manufacturers have come to me and said, we're having special events, they're captive audience, it's just for them. And I declined because, the time away and being only focused with one group was not going to cut it for me. So the timing of it is right, and the opportunity to maximize your budget's there. Now, that being said, it's amazing how quickly 4 days goes by. And as a retailer, you have to maximize that time again against that investment. And I found a couple of tricks for me where really the DEMA app is just critical. If you're not using that, you're kind of walking around with a piece of paper trying to figure out where things are happening. But the DEMA app has allowed us to really maximize that time at the show. One, I like to go through and first pick all the presentations that I'm interested in attending, because some of them only happen once, and you want to make sure that you know when that's going to happen. So you start to build your schedule out with your presentations, and then next you can layer in on your calendar there the specific meetings you're going to have with your representatives, with your sales reps, with your manufacturing reps, liking to schedule them in time so that you can show up at their booth and they know you're coming, and you can really focus on what you want to do with them. And then the other piece around it is the third piece is there's so many exhibitors out there, and you want to maximize your time with as many of them as you can. What I like to do is go through the exhibitor list and pick them as my favorites, and they show up on a list of favorites. And then as I go through and have visited that booth, I click it off, and I know I've been there. So there's just so much happening at the show, on the exhibit floor, meeting with your manufacturers, the presentations, but then there's so many more other network opportunities, the social events that the different organizations have. All the training agencies have something. Dan has a big social on Tuesday night at the show, which is always really great. It was packed last year down in New Orleans. And then you just get to hang out at the hotel and meet with your people. So there's a lot going on at the show, and it really allows you to maximize your time, along with bringing staff members to the show who get to fill in some of the gaps for you. It can focus around things. I remember, after the pandemic, we know we missed it tremendously in 2020. It was like a hole left in the industry. And, fortunately in 2021, DEMA stepped up, brought the show back against a lot of headwinds. And I went out there, and I remember before I went out, I wasn't involved with DEMA except to attend the show. I sent Tom Ingram a note and said, I want to talk to you, Tom, at the show. And he said, okay, let's set up a time. And I spent a half hour with him on the floor. And I know there's a lot of old timers out there who say DEMA isn't what it used to be. And that's true. It's not what it used to be. But from an industry perspective and from a dive retailer perspective, I say, let's make DEMA what it needs to be for the future. And it matters. It matters tremendously to dive retailers.
Totally agree, Jeff. I mean, if you're in the industry and you're not going to DEMA, I think you are so mistaken in your choices. It really is. It's the only thing like it in the world.
And Greg, Neil has a great perspective on this, and I'll let him tell his little story. He says, I'll let you say what you always say about DEMA, Neil, in terms of going all over the world versus 4 days at the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only opportunity we have to meet all the 5 stakeholder groups in one place at one time. I mentioned to Willie, I could spend 365 days a year traveling all over the United States and the world to get face time with the people that I get to see at that show, and I'm not sure it's not what it used to be. I mean, the industry's different than what it used to be, which means, the footprint of DEMA is smaller, but it's only because the exhibitors have downsized the size of the booth. The same number of exhibitors are there. The retailers, pretty much the same number of retailers come, instead of the old days when they used to bring a dozen of their staff as a perk. They just can't afford that anymore, which in a sense can be a good thing. You get more time with the movers and shakers. And from an exhibitor standpoint, I used to tell my franchise operators and my Bahama dive operators, if you think that you're going to buy a 10 by 10 booth and go to DEMA and pop it up and be flooded with people, you're mistaken. DEMA's successful as a result of what you've done all year to create that demand. I mean, if you don't have a marketing plan, if you don't do pre-mailers, if you don't make appointments, you're going to be very disappointed with DEMA. But if otherwise, I mean, different than a consumer show as well. I mean, people go to consumer show and there's 15,000 excited consumers there. You talk to 100 consumers, and if you converted all of them to a sale, you'd have 100 customers. You go to DEMA, may not be as exciting in that sense. You talk to one mover and shaker wholesaler, and you book 100 customers. That's the difference.
And that might happen at the bar, actually, too. It may not even be on the show floor. It's just the event brings in people all around the world. It's the only time or opportunity we have to bring this group together. And you'll get out of it what you put into it. I mean, I've been doing it. This will be my 28th DEMA for Scuba Radio. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't change it for the world. Now, I have a blast doing it because after you do it a few years, it turns into a family reunion almost as well. But I'll tell you what, if you're in the industry, I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to be a part of this celebration of diving. There's just nothing like it.
And just because the show is different isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No.
That's right.
Sure.
You gotta
Sure.
move with the times and make the
Sure.
best. Just
So
make an adjustment here or there, but you can still get plenty of positive stuff out of it from a business sense, for sure.
So speaking of
Go
times,
with the
everybody
flow like
go
a drift dive.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
come to the DEMA show. I would love to see you guys. We'd love to interact with you. If you're listening and you're one of our contributors, please stop by the booth. We have something for you. We'd like to just thank you. And if you're a retailer out there and you don't know much about our magazine, stop by. You can subscribe for free at ScubaDivingIndustry.com. And I'm super excited. I'm going to move out of the way here so you can see this real quick.
Yep, he's
Actually,
going
I'll
to
cover
show
my
it.
camera. Yeah, there it is right there. So we are fortunate. And Neil, remember this several years ago. The Bahamas did a program called Underwater Photo Week, and we brought in 5 of the world's best photographers all over the planet to shoot the Bahamas. And because it's such a diverse product, it's hard to do with just one person. It's not one destination. And one of the premier, we had 2 photographers. Stephen Franklin one. He did our cover for April, I believe. Eric Chang did our cover for September, which was another photographer. And I'm so pleased the cover I just showed you is Alex Mustard is doing our cover for our November issue. And so it's going to be fantastic. I'm super excited about November. It's our post-show issue because it actually comes out right after the DEMA show. But we have secured an article from Fabien Cousteau about his project that he's working on. So he's going to be writing, and then hopefully we'll be on the podcast then when we record in December. Plus, we have Jeff Wozanik's part 3 on the business of rebreathers. It's a fascinating business, and he kind of walks retailers through, if you're interested in the business, how to kind of get started in it and what you need to know. Plus, we got a whole bunch of other stuff coming in. So I just want to thank everybody here, and I think we're right on time. So anybody have any closing comments?
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you all at the DEMA show.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you.
next month it'll be a post-DEMA edition of the Level Up podcast.
Sure will.
And look forward to seeing everybody there at the DEMA show as well. All right. Well, I will wrap
Brett,
it up
you got
then,
anything-
Willie. Yeah.
Got anything to say, Britton, before we roll?
Bretton?
I'll see y'all in Vegas.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Vegas, baby. Here we come. All right. Well, on that note, we will wrap it up. I am Greg the Dive Master from Scuba Radio. Check it out every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern time. Till next month, remember, it's always better down where it's wetter.
This has been Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Produced by Scuba Radio and the Klein Group. For more info, go to ScubaDivingIndustry.com.